Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing Who Was Better. The topic for this Who Was Better? One of the classic rivalries that set up WrestleMania, that put WWF as a national company. Two guys that are synonymous with pro wrestling, especially in the 1980s. That's Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper. Now, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, we grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. There is going to be 8 separate categories. At the end, we're going to total up the points. There's also a chance for 5 bonus points that we'll talk about when we get there. With that being said, let's jump into our first category, technical wrestling. For this, we're going to give Hogan a 3, and I'm kind of adjusting this to the time and to the era. And while Hogan may not have been the best technical wrestler in the WWF, and I know this has been said a million times, if you look at his work in Japan, he's a much different worker there. And I do think there are times where Hogan did stand out as a technical wrestler. His match with the Warrior was a really good match. The first one, not the second one. And there's other memorable matches that he had where he held up his part of the bargain. I don't think he's above average, but he's right there and he's able to hold a match, so I'm giving him a 3. For Piper, I'm also giving Piper a 3. And Piper, much like Hogan, is a product of their time. These guys weren't asked to do chain wrestling. They weren't asked to have 5 different suplex combinations or 6 different dives that they could do. You gotta remember, this is coming from an era where a sleeper hold, a bear hug, a full Nelson are all finishing moves. So with that, again, Piper gets a 3. Now going to our next category, striking. For striking, I'm giving Hogan a 4. Where I think both of these guys excel when it comes to the in-ring is in this category. They're brawlers, basically. Punch, kick, chop, headbutt, whatever you want to call it. This is what they're good at. The reason Hogan stays at a 4 and not a 5, I mean, let's be honest, there are some times where he's hulking up and you can obviously he's not hitting anything. But for the most part, he kept it pretty good. That's why he gets a 4. For Piper, Piper is getting a 5. Piper's punches were always snug, always direct, always looked like they connected. Like I said with Hogan, these guys were quintessential brawlers. That was their style. Their style would fit in better in a bar fight than it would in a collegiate wrestling match. That's why I think Piper, he gets a 5. Now going from that, how they perform as a heel. And I'm going to be honest with you, they're both getting a 5 here. And the reason for that, if you asked me in 1995 and early 1996 if Hulk Hogan could have played an effective heel, I would have said not on your life. However, his heel turn and his run as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, I mean, that solidified it. The NWO is one of the biggest things that's ever happened in pro wrestling. And one of the reasons that happened is the Hulk Hogan heel turn. He got a whole second lease on life from that heel turn. He became interesting again. He became someone that the fans cared about again. I mean, if you really think about it, he has one of the best heel turns of all time. I've even heard Kevin Nash say it. Him and Hall weren't heels. Hogan was. He's the reason why they worked as a heel team. That's why he gets a 5. Now Piper, if you're not of a certain age, if you only came into Piper's career post WrestleMania 3, you didn't see his heel work, or the best of his heel work. Maybe you've seen it on some highlight reels. But for that build-up for WrestleMania, his feud with Snuka, his feud with Chavo Guerrero Sr., Piper is one of the greatest heels that's ever done it. He absolutely was as important to the WWF becoming a national company as Hulk Hogan was as a babyface. Batman needs a Joker, Superman needs Lex Luthor, Hulk Hogan needs Roddy Piper. He was the perfect heel. He was so good at it. He's one of the heels that was so good that eventually that turned him face and he didn't even have to change much about his presentation. The fans just loved him for who he was. Again, both these guys get a 5 here. They are top notch. Now going from that, how they perform as a face. Again, no surprise to anybody. Both of these guys are getting a 5 here as well. Hulk Hogan, what can you say? Even if you don't like his politics, even if you don't like him as a person, as Terry Bollea, and you booed him out of the building on Monday Night Raw a few weeks back, you cannot deny that Hulk Hogan was one of the biggest baby faces of all time. It always baffles me when he spreads all these ridiculous lies that are easily debunked, like he could have been the bassist for Metallica, or the wrestler was originally written about him. He doesn't have to lie because he's Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's real life is astounding. The stuff that man was able to do, and again, whether you like him or not, you have to give him the credit for what he was able to do. And for me, he's on the very, very short list of greatest baby faces of all time. That's why he definitely gets a 5. Now Piper, the reason Piper gets a 5, same reason. Once Piper turned babyface in the lead up to WrestleMania 3, he was so beloved and people just wanted to cheer him. Whether it be his Intercontinental run, his comeback when he was fighting against Hogan, Piper as a face, Hogan as a heel, or any time he showed up on the TV after he turned his face, he was one of the most beloved wrestlers in the company, no matter what company he worked. Everything that made him special as a heel made him just as special as a babyface. That's why he gets a 5 as well. Now, our next category, promos. Shocker, they're both going to get a 5 again. I mean, let's be really, really honest here, people. We are talking about the cream of the crop in the 1980s. You put these two there, Andre, Dusty, Ric Flair, that's basically your top of the food chain for that decade. And I mean, altogether, Andre's not a good promo as compared to the other four. But promo-wise, there's something to be said about Hulk Hogan. He may not have been The Rock, as funny as The Rock, or as funny as Piper, or as, I don't know how you could say badass as Steve Austin, but there's something to be said about say your prayers, take your vitamins, and all that he said. The what you gonna do, brother? The fact that every wrestling fan can do a Hulk Hogan promo and can do a Hulk Hogan impression shows you how much of a mark he left on professional wrestling. There are kids that are 10 years old and younger right now that are wrestling fans that could do Hulk Hogan impressions and never seen him wrestle, or may have only seen him wrestle in highlight reel. That's why, to me, he definitely deserves a 5. And on the other end of it, much like I said with Hulk Hogan being one of the greatest baby faces of all time, if you give me a Mount Rushmore of talkers, Piper's right on there. He's every bit as good as The Rock. He's every bit as good as Bobby Heenan. He's every bit as good as Paul Heyman. Anyone you would have put in that category as a great promo guy ever, CM Punk, Roddy Piper is right there with all of them. He may not have as many of the memorable quotes or catchphrases as some of the others, but he has things that you definitely remember, like, you don't throw rocks at a man with a machine gun, or from They Live, I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick ass and I'm all out of bubblegum. I mean, he was so good, especially as a heel. He can make you hate him so quickly with just him talking into a microphone. He was a master at it. That's why he gets a perfect score. Next up, presentation. No surprise, again, they're both getting a 5. Both of these men have such iconic looks, iconic music, whether it be Hulk Hogan in the red and yellow, Real American, ripping off his shirt, waving the American flag, or switching over to Voodoo Child and coming out with the NWO black and white and dyed black beard, playing the guitar on his weight belt. I mean, it's iconic. These are images that are seared into wrestling fans' brains. Then you go on the other side, Roddy Piper in his kilt, whether it be his Hot Rod shirt, the Superman shirt that he would wear from time to time, the Panther face shirt. Piper had just as much of an iconic look. He'd come out playing the bagpipes. He'd have local bagpipe bands play him to the ring. He was special. They were both special. And you knew it the second their music hit that someone special was coming out. Both of these guys had absolutely perfect presentation for who they were. Their characters fit with it so well. That's why they both get a 5. We're going to our next category, charisma. And for charisma, shocker, shocker, they're also both going to get a 5. I know these guys are getting super high scores, and it's going to start sounding like I'm a hype man for both of these people. These are the pillars. These are the foundation. These are the guys that Vince McMahon, again, another person, whatever you want to say about him outside of WWF, I understand he's a terrible person outside. However, you cannot deny what he was able to do with these two guys being the focal point. Whether that be WrestleMania 1, whether that be the war to settle the score on MTV, whether it be the whole rock and wrestling thing. As much as Hulk Hogan did, Piper did as well. And their charisma was off the charts. There were so many Hulkamaniacs growing up as kids. And on the flip side, there were so many other kids that were Roddy Piper fans. Roddy Piper is the reason why I started watching wrestling, him and David Schultz. I turned it on one day and they were both doing an interview together, and I never stopped watching since. Now, my mother says I did watch it before then, just not as regularly, but those were the guys that I wanted to see. I wanted to see what they were going to do next. I was young enough that I didn't have a concept that they were the bad guys. They were just entertaining to me. And there were a lot of people that were Piper fans, especially after he turned Babyface. Their charisma, both of these guys had off the chart charisma. That's why they're looked at so favorably. That's why both of these guys are no-brainer Hall of Famers, first ballot, two of the best of their generation. Now, last but not least, our last category, how they perform in the big game. Basically, your WrestleMania main events, your pay-per-view main events, how you handle the ball when it's given to you and you're asked to score a touchdown. Or for our people that don't watch American football, I just got done watching the NFC and AFC football games, the championship games. So for our people outside of America, it's, I guess, how you kick the ball. I don't know. I'm not much of a world football fan. I do watch it during the Olympics, but just don't follow it because of the time that it would be on. Not saying they're not super talented. They are. Point I'm making here is you get the ball to your best talent, like Messi, for example, or in American football, you give it to a Saquon Barkley. And I know I'm going off on a little bit of a rant, just explaining the category, so let's get into it. For Hogan, I'm giving a 4. And the reason for it is there are a lot of classic Hulk Hogan main event matches. I just mentioned Hogan and the Warrior earlier, some of his matches with Flair in WCW, Hogan and Goldberg. Even though it was on TV, I thought it was a very good match. Hogan and Bundy was very enjoyable, in my opinion, on a much maligned WrestleMania. Hogan and Andre was a spectacle. It's not a great match, but it's a great spectacle. Him and Savage, him and Orndorff, amazing matches with those guys. The reason he gets just a notch from being a 5 is we do get the matches with the second Warrior match in Halloween Havoc, or the junk with Yokozuna, which I think everybody universally dislikes. But you can't deny the man, he does have his classics. That's why he gets a 4. Now, Roddy Piper, he's actually getting a 3 here. And the reason for that, and I do preface this by saying Roddy Piper is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. He's definitely in top 5. Him, Mick Foley, CM Punk, and probably Raven are my top 4 wrestlers of all time that I enjoy watching. Piper doesn't really have a laundry list of classic matches. He has one of the best matches I ever seen, him and Valentine at Starrcade 83. Him and Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title is an amazing match as well, but there's a lot of just okay matches. And I'm not knocking Piper. I love Roddy Piper. As you can see, in most categories, he gets a 5 here. 6 out of the 8 categories, he gets a 5. So for me, this was the one hole I would say in his game, is he doesn't have those classic matches. And again, that's kind of a story of their time and what was expected of them more than it is of him. No one thought that 40 years after the fact you'd go back and watch Piper and Snuka. Up until that time, you seen that, you remembered it as being awesome, you didn't nitpick it and watch it 30,000 times. It was a whole different thing back then. But I digress. Now we're going to total up their points, and then we'll get to the bonus, which we'll talk about that in a moment. For Hulk Hogan, the Hulkster gets a total of 36. For Roddy Piper, Piper gets a total of 36 as well, a dead even score. Now this is where it's special. This is where this bonus comes in. This is why I created the bonus, because one of my early videos, I had a tie, so I had to figure a way to have a tiebreaker. Well, if you're not subscribed to the channel and this is your first time watching, first of all, thank you. What I do is every Wednesday, I put a poll on my community page on YouTube where you could basically vote who do you think is better of the 2 wrestlers I'm going to do a video on. And whoever wins that gets 5 bonus points. With that being said, the winner of this week's poll, with almost 800 votes, and the man that's going to win it all, the Hot Rod, Roddy Piper. And I kind of felt it was going to go that way when I went to the poll, especially with the discourse about Hogan lately and how maligned he is right now. And I'm not saying that I disagree with people that dislike him. He has plenty of reasons to be disliked. But looking at it objectively, taking Terry out of Hogan and keeping Hogan as a character, you can't argue with the man and how special he was and how important he was. I can't say I'm upset that Piper won because, again, Piper's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. But this was another one for me. These are really fun for me to go back and break down. It really is special for me to look at these and analyze them and look at a guy differently. I was never a Hulkamaniac. I didn't even have a Hulk Hogan shirt until I bought a TNA mystery pack and it came in that. Heck, even when he was in the NWO, I never had a Hollywood Hogan shirt. I had outsider shirts, I had the Six shirt, I had the General NWO shirt, no Hollywood Hogan shirts. But again, like I said, you can't deny the man and his importance in pro wrestling, even if you hate him, which it's very fair if you do. Just like I say, it's fair if you hate Chris Benoit or whatever. And I know Hogan's discretions are nowhere on the level of Chris Benoit, but you get my point. With that being said, congratulations, Piper. You win again. If you made it here to the end, let's smash that like button, share the video, hit subscribe if you haven't. That all really does help us out as YouTubers. There's also something that recently I've added to the YouTube page. If you see a tab on my YouTube page that says shopping, click on it and check it out. I've got a couple different collections in there. I've got a wrestling collection, I've got a music collection, and I got a video game collection. I'm probably going to add some more, maybe a movie collection and random stuff collection. And basically what it is, it's products that I think are cool, that I think you might think are cool. And if you purchase them, I get a commission. It doesn't change the price, it doesn't raise the price. But let's say, for instance, you were looking to pick up a Jacob Fatu shirt. I have one in my wrestling collection. You pick it up from there, I get a percentage of the thing. You get the Jacob Fatu shirt you were going to buy anyway. It helps me out. It helps me to purchase items to make the show better, to make my videos better, to get improvements. I'm very shortly, within the next month, I'm going to be buying a brand new laptop, which is going to be quite expensive because my laptop I'm currently using is on its very last leg. If you've seen my other videos on the page, I've done some old cards where I'm opening old packs, trying to find specific wrestlers' rookie cards. Piper's going to be one I'm going to go after eventually, but those packs are very expensive right now. That would be something that would help me out to fund that. I've already found a Shawn Michaels and a Bret Hart, which I am very happy about. They're rookie cards, that is. But anyway, I digress. Check that out if you want. If you please could do that, it would definitely help me out. And there's also always, you can become a member, which helps me out as well. That just gives me money directly. But I digress. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Who Was Better.